Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, June 17th, 2021 meeting of the school committee. We have just returned from executive session, and I would invite all those who are here who are able and willing to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so the first item we have on the agenda is public comment. I do not see anybody here from the public. Has anybody received any public comments to be shared? Okay. Then do we have recognitions? We have a recognition. Then let's move into reports. We have a year-end, end-of-year financial report. And we have Ms. Rothermich for that.
Thank you. Make this viewable for everyone. Go. So you have the memo that I put in the packet as well, but basically at this time of year, we are looking at a positive variance of around $46,000. As we've talked about several times throughout the year, there's been so many changes that have happened with all the pandemic, with all of the money that has been brought in. We've made lots of changes where things are being funded from. Staff have come and gone, multiple different issues throughout the year. So, and again, as a reminder, for the operating budget, we also use offsets of the athletic revolving, the bus fee, circuit breaker, parking fees, school building use, international tuition, and the preschool tuition revolving accounts. And those pages are included within your packet in terms of what the offset and what the balances are. So looking at payroll first, to begin with, as we talked about earlier reports, there's always swings. We've had staff taking leaves, taking extended leaves. The pandemic has been a very different year for everyone, as we've talked about. Finding subs is very difficult. So there's been changes in terms of what has been presented and what you see before you now. For the payroll, what I am also indicating is a non-use of those offsets from the revolvings, the international tuition, the athletic revolving, preschool revolving. That is a proposal to, again, preserve that those accounts for the future due to the loss of revenue in each of those accounts. Shifting down to the expenses, when you look at the detail and the projected, you'll see several items that are over budget and several items that are under budget in the expense side. A lot of that has to do with just really the shift. Students were home, changing in terms of what you needed to address students in their learning, whether they were remote, hybrid, and then coming back. So there was a lot of shift in terms of what was actually budgeted to what was being used. And again, what we paid for out of COVID money versus what was paid for out of the operating budget. So you can see the variances on the expenses. The other piece I'd like to draw your attention to is the food service account, which we have discussed as well. It was operating with a negative cash flow of $100,000. We talked about the variances in terms of how we ended up with such a deficit in terms of operations. But in addition, within that revolving account is over $100,000 of prepaid balances. So in other words, your student at the end of the school year may have $10 cash still sitting on their lunch account that will be available for them September 1. So we really needed to put those that money back, that cash back. So the cash balance for food service was negative 100,000. We needed to cover that deficit and bring those student prepaid balances up. So that is a big change from what we have done in the past. We've covered deficit accounts. This time we're covering accounts that have been prepaid, if you will. This also represents non-use of the building revolving account. As we know, we've done no rentals during the year, so that had no revenue. And you can see where some of the other changes have happened, as well as the bus fees, which represented this deficit for transportation. So all of these changes is where we stand if we agree to make these changes in terms of the offsets, which we will get into later on when we discuss, doing those final authority to do those final transfers for year end. So when you look at this in summary, from the operating budget, we may stand to give back to the town approximately $46,000. This will continue to fluctuate a little between now and the end of June. The other piece I want to draw your attention to is our capital projects. So we have completed the modular projects, and you can see that the Hopkins modular project came in $457,000 under. So this again is money that we will be able to turn back to the town. So just a small amount for Elmwood, but a larger amount for Hopkins. Hopkins was deemed to be a little trickier in terms of how that connection into the building was going to go. The other one up for consideration, the wetlands order of condition, this $40,000 that has been riding forward for a number of years. You really only have 2 years for a capital project, and then without asking appropriations to roll that money forward, the money does revert back to the town. At this time, I have asked the town to bring this to appropriations and ask for that money to continue to roll forward, but that is really a decision of the committee. It has not gotten past review to go any further. So it is up to the committee whether you give that money back to the town, and we're either asking the town for the full amount again or for a partial amount if it ever gets that far. So that's a committee decision as well. So that's kind of where we are in summary.
I have a question because I'm not sure I understand a couple of the line items up on the top page. Can you clarify or explain again? I did hear you explain it a few times, but I didn't get it. On the accounts that are revenue accounts, where like the international and preschool and was it athletic?
Correct.
They generally generate revenue to those accounts, but we didn't generate revenue. So what's happening here? Is it that because we didn't generate revenue, what does it mean to be preserving those accounts? What does that mean? We're putting money into those accounts?
So what we're doing is we're not spending.
Not spending.
So if you look at, I believe it's page 3 of the report, which gives you the details for the revolving. If you were to look at, and I'll make this.
We didn't have revenue come in.
Correct.
And we're not spending.
Right. So what we're trying to do is ensure that we have enough in the future. So for instance, what we had appropriated for international was $300,000. We brought in $216,000. However, that already includes students. That's 2 years of revenue because it'll include students that are here now and students that have paid for next year. So if you cut that approximately in half, we were going to use $300,000, bringing in only a revenue of $150,000. So you would quickly turn that account to not be usable for future budgets. So that's what we're trying to do, is not spend out of these accounts, knowing that this year we did not bring in the revenue, so that we can cover both this year and next year and the
Okay.
year after.
Okay.
So it's really a long-term look to make sure that these accounts stay sustainable at the level we've been using as an offset for the budget in the future.
Okay.
Make
Thanks.
more sense?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? With the high school edition, how much longer do we think that's taking? Right now, we have an available balance of $1,225,000, which seems like quite a bit after however long we've been working on it. So, what are the projections for like when that will be over and when we will know what that available balance actually is that remains?
So that is the next report.
Oh, okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Well, overall, this is good news, right? We had a
It is-
surplus.
it is
And we're
good news.
using it to
It-
balance things out, and,
Because this was such an unusual year.
Yeah.
And because things kept changing many times during the year, it was troubling to watch.
yeah.
And it was difficult on staff, as I said, staff made changes based on their level of comfort due to the pandemic. So that changed payroll, so there were a lot of things that happened this year.
Yeah, throughout the year through the chair, throughout the year we were, you were really trying to drive projections on what we should spend, what the revenue might be, and we didn't really have a clear view until very recently. So that we're only, that we have a surplus is great. It's better than not having enough.
Correct.
And it's not too much, so it was pretty good forecasting.
Can I just have a quick question? Could you remind me what we think we need to finish the wetland project?
So the total project is $100,000.
So we need 60,000?
We need another 60.
So is there any opportunity for us to petition the town manager or appropriations to keep our surplus in-house for that purpose, to roll that 46 into our coffers to add to that 40 that we have, so we're that much closer?
No, you really, for that to have, it's a town meeting vote.
Okay.
So you can't take that and just reallocate it to a capital account.
Okay. I knew you were going to say that, but I thought I'd ask anyway.
I know. It'll go back into the general fund. It will be considered, free cash for next year, which then would be voted on by the community as to where they would like that to be spent.
Okay. Fair enough.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you.
We have the high school project update, which is also you.
Oh,
Okay. And I'm going to invite Dan Pilata up to join me. So Dan is our owner's project manager from P3, so appreciate you being able to join us tonight. So we thought we'd talk a little bit about what's going on with the high school project. So I've given you a couple of updates throughout the year, and of course, everything in a pandemic is difficult. So we've talked about that, we've talked about the delays, we've talked about supply chain issues. We finally got all materials on site, took a while, but that did happen. Another issue that did come up was existing conditions, namely the roof. So when the fabrication came, if you will, the existing roof did not agree with the as-builts. So in other words, tying into that existing hip did not agree, and so there was redesign, re-engineering to make that match. And each time you do these things, it causes more delays. And then, of course, all of these delays pile on top of each other, put us into winter conditions, which was also not part of that plan. So I guess, the thing that is happening is we are making forward progress. It's very, very slow, no doubt. every time we have these changes, there's review by P3, really to protect us as owners of the project, making sure there's quality. DRA, our architect, has also been, P3 and DRA has attended weekly meetings since August?
A long time.
A long time, to really kind of protect
I almost want to go back to the
owner.
pandemic.
So, looking for errors, looking for omissions, looking at quality of work, and, review, and really staying on top of the general contractor. So, in terms of when we will be there, we're looking at hopefully by the end of this summer to have this wrapped up. Not all of the billing has come through. So as those recs are put in, again, they're reviewed. And sometimes they're sent back saying, you have not completed that work. So that number will come down. I do believe will come in under budget, however.
Okay.
So, but I'll let
Well, you did
Dan,
fine.
if
I
you-
can go back.
anything else, or
I just came to talk a little bit about the project, if I may. I don't know who the chairman is. Madam Chairman, I try to be correct here. The business manager was kind when she said, this didn't match and that didn't match. We actually peeled the roof off and found some deficiencies we had to correct, some elevations that weren't correct, and some of those items started to pile up. We're at the point now where we have all the parts and pieces, and it's just becoming a scheduling situation. We expect to have the subroof, which is a metal decking, completed on the building by Monday, and then they'll immediately follow behind that with insulation in the real roof. And once that real roof goes on, which will probably take 2 to 3 weeks, then it's a run for the races on the interior. It's pretty hard to do anything on the interior when it rains every other day, and there's certain codes where we can't work with water, especially with electricity. But all the parts and pieces are here. The last delivery we're expecting midweek is the brick. All of the brick is to match your brick. We had to specially order the brick to get it to match. And the precast pieces so that when the addition is completed, it will look identical to the existing building. But from a schedule standpoint, we're going to be working some Saturdays, some nights to accomplish the task. We really have a big task in front of us. And daily calls now with the business manager, and weekly calls with the superintendent of schools, and hourly calls with the maintenance supervisor. So we're working together as a team to get it done. We know you need the classrooms. The contractor knows you need the classrooms, but we're not going to accept substandard work. This building's a 50-year building. If it takes an extra week or two, we're going to make sure that it's done right so that you have a quality building. We have had to remove and replace some items that weren't right. But we think we're past all that now, and we think we're on a good track, and hopefully I don't have to come back. But if I have to come back, it'll probably be good news. But I'm here to answer any questions you have, because I want you to be comfortable with your addition, and I want you to be excited about it, because when it's done, if you went in there today, you'd look at it and go, but when it's done, it's going to be like a seamless addition to the building. It was always there.
So you don't foresee any more problems with supplies for the interior?
No, we think we have all the millwork pieces, which is usually something that's a late delivery. We have all of those. We have all of our ceiling materials. We have the only thing we don't have any gypsum materials because we can't deliver it, but it's secured. And the supply chain on that material is, although albeit slow, the amount that we need for this project is not such that it would cause a delay to the project. I'm quite confident we have all the parts and pieces. At this point, it's coordinating the labor. Smaller projects like these tend to be more difficult to coordinate than larger projects, believe it or not, especially during a pandemic. So, they don't get the same level of attention that a larger project does. But we are going to, we're going to work our tails off during the summer, and we are going to get this done.
By getting it done, do you mean in time for the fall?
Yes.
That's fantastic.
It's not going to be 100%. We might be working nights touching up paint and fixing floor tiles that we reject, but it'll be occupiable and safe. Your building commissioner has been excellent. He comes to every meeting. He triple checks us, who's triple checking the architect, who's triple checking the contractor. And he's been wonderful too. And when we've found problems, we solve the problems as a team. Nobody panics. Nobody throws darts at each other. We just solve the problems, and we're going to continue to do so till it's completed. But make no mistake, we've got a long summer ahead of us.
Other questions?
It's a good thing the days are longer.
True. That is true. That is helpful, but we do have lights. I mean, it's not the dark ages.
Yeah, through the chair, knowing that Susan and Tim were both on the marathon building project too, they're very experienced with this. So I guess I would like to get Susan's kind of opinion on how likely it is. Are we really applying all the pressure we can to get all the contractors and subs to work with us, understanding it is a smaller project and they might not consider it as much a priority as some of their bigger projects? Do we have any leverage, or are the nights and weekends, is that going to help? Or how much assurance can you give us, given the experience you have?
Well, I will say that there's a lot of heat on the GC. P3 has reached out to the subs, which is kind of around the game. You're not really supposed to do that, but it assured them that the town is prepared to do what needs to be done to get the project done. That said, we are working with Evan because I always like to know that there's a plan. So I've asked Evan to make sure that he has a plan for September 1 if we don't have the rooms. Because you can't operate without that, fallback. So Evan is fully prepared with what to do with the students come September 1. If we're, like Dan mentioned, if we need one more week, Evan knows what to do with the kids. That, to me, is the most important, is making sure that the kids can continue learning and in a good and a safe spot, as opposed to trying to really just jam them in. We want this project done.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, I mean, it's important to have a contingency as long as it doesn't become the plan. So we'll keep the pressure on, but have a contingency.
The plan's to finish the building.
Good, thank you.
That the subcontractors, as you just heard, we are talking to them directly to make sure that they're scheduled on the days that the schedule says. We're at that point where we're double checking everything that comes out of the contractor's mouth and verifying it towards the schedule. We've probably had a dozen schedules on this project, which is not uncommon. They constantly get updated. The last schedule has been held far better than the previous 11, and we think we're turning the corner on that. We're also reassuring the subcontractors too that we're here to help them through the process, especially the file sub-bid subcontractors, which is a Chapter 149 term, that they have a little extra special meaning and a little extra special rights and responsibilities. And we've had tremendous response from them. They're thrilled that they understand that the town is not only inquiring, they want to finish too. I mean, this has been on their books longer than they wanted it to be on their books. So all the parties seem to want to accomplish what you guys wanted accomplished a few months ago.
I'm really grateful that we have the construction materials, considering everything I've heard about supply chain and costs of
It
materials
is really
lately.
bad out there.
Yeah.
It
So
really is bad.
I'm really grateful that we have all of that.
We're on it. I mean, we're really trying our best to get this done. At this point, it's going to become a labor issue. If I come back in a month and I tell you there's a couple of doors missing, somebody stole the doors because they were here. So, but no, seriously, we think we're on top of every little detail at this point in time, and Part A can go to Part B to C to D, and we can get to the point of a safe, occupiable addition within the time frame.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
so
for
much.
having me.
This was great. Nice to be looking forward to.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. I see you at the meeting.
Yeah. See you in a few days.
She'll call you tomorrow.
I don't have to listen to any more budget stuff, do I?
No, we're all set. That's great. So ready for superintendent's report then? Is there
Yeah,
anything?
I'm
Okay.
all set. The committee is set.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, my report is very brief today. We only have a couple of topics. So this is a superintendent's report for June 17th, 2021. I think you're going to be very surprised at our enrollment numbers. The slide that you see on the screen right now is the one that I showed you last week on June 10th. And as of last Thursday, you know that we had 24 kids who had returned to Hopkinton from homeschooling in private school settings. And as of last Thursday, we were at 428 students joining the Hopkinton Public Schools for next year. You remember that we graduated 328 seniors, so we were 100 students sort of net gain for 21-22. Over the last week, that number has grown to, oops, I don't want to do that. That number has grown to 460 students. So if we had 460 students and we take out our 328 graduates, we are currently at 132 students. So 32 kids in 7 days have enrolled in the Hopkinton Public Schools. Now, I do want to be fair and remind everyone that we have not taken out any of our exiting kids. So in the event that the last day of school rolls around and 2 fourth graders, 6 sixth graders, 3 eighth graders all tell us that they won't be coming back, those numbers in the exiting column will sort of start to grow there. But right now, we are 32 kids ahead of where we were last week and 132 net gain going into the 21-22 school year.
Can I ask a quick question? How many of those are returning homeschooled students?
My
Of the
last
32?
check, it was 24. So I didn't do that for
Okay.
today, but I can do that again for our next update so you can
Thank
see how many are returns.
Dr. Kavanaugh, do you have any idea of that sort of profile of the redshirted kindergartner or are kindergarten or first grade numbers looking typical, or are they looking larger than normal?
So right now for K, we have 210 approved and 32 pending, so that number will go to 242 very quickly. And that's about right for right now in kindergarten. You can see that grades 1 and grade 2 have, 7 pending, but if you look at grade 1, there are 26 students there. So those could be kids whose parents kept them out for K, and they're coming back in. Grade 1 is clearly our biggest number.
Well, that's like a whole new classroom coming in.
Yes.
Marathon edition can't come soon enough, right?
So on average, it's like 10, currently, like 10, and a net
That is
add of
right.
10 per grade,
Yes.
including K? Yeah.
Yes. And that's a nice question because people, will always ask about your ability to absorb.
Right.
So if it were just 10 across every grade and we had, say, 14 second grades, you could pop one kid into each one of those and everything would be super. But when you look at 26 in grade 1, that shifts things for
Can be
us.
lopsided, yeah.
If you have, for example, you're looking at something like grade 3 where there are only 7 students, easy to absorb them. 2 juniors, easy to take them in when you start to see the bigger numbers.
Thanks.
I thought it would be interesting to put our dashboard up there one more time. These are our final COVID data for 2021. Just so the community knows, we have not had a positive COVID-19 case in the Hopkinton Public Schools since May 5th. I believe in the community right now there are 0 cases. And if we took those cumulative numbers, the 264, and we realize we have about 4,500 people here between our faculty, paraprofessionals, nurses, custodians, cafeteria workers, all of those folks in our community, we've had about 6% of our community test positive over the 183 days of the school year. I feel like that's pretty successful overall. More exciting COVID news comes to us. This language that you see here actually belongs to DESE. It's not my language. So what they're telling us right now is that in the fall of 21-22 of the next school year, so this coming August, all school districts and all schools are going to be required to be back in person full-time 5 days a week, and all of the health and safety requirements are lifted. So as it stands right now, no social distancing, no masks. What DESE also tells us, though, is that in that second paragraph, they will be collaborating with the Department of Public Health. And in the event that Public Health says that, say, for example, they would prefer to have K-5 kids with masks back on, we will learn that over the summer. But right now, no masks, no social distancing. And so as DESE gets updates, they will be providing them to districts and schools. All right. We are, again, holding various summer programs, and so we have our extended school year program, and this summer the district is going to be sponsoring different summer learning programs. This is, funded through grants, and it's for all ages. We've got K-12 out there, and we also have some English learner programming that will be happening. So what we're thinking right now for the summer, and of course we have to collaborate with public health, we have to collaborate with our nurses, but right now what we're looking at, the state is actually encouraging us to keep masks in place, but that's the word that they're using, is encouraging. So they're not suggesting that, we have to do that. They are just sort of underscoring that it might be important to do that. What we're thinking right now as a school district, and we have been encouraged also to think about your own metrics, is that our K-5 kids will still be wearing masks in our summer programs, and the K-5 instruction will take place in our air-conditioned spaces, but for our 6 to 12 kids, masks are going to be optional, and 6 to 12 instruction will be taking place at the middle and high schools. So that's our thinking at the current time.
Can I ask a question? Are there any air-conditioned spaces in the middle or high schools for the students?
So I think that in the middle school, I think that the library is air-conditioned.
There are a couple of spaces.
Will they be used?
We're working with Mr. Keller to identify the spaces that will be used. I think it's a very small program at the middle school, probably 4 classrooms worth of students, so they may not all be in air-conditioned space, but any that we have available, we will be accessing.
It'll be hot.
Yes, it will.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. So how does the mask requirement for K-5 in the summer compare with the previous slide? Was that the previous slide just for the fall?
Yes. What the department has said is that they are not putting out summer guidance. They are simply encouraging districts to follow the previous guidance, but also pay attention to your metrics. And I think that if Hopkinton is a town where, most of our 12 to 18s are vaccinated, I mean, you saw that on that slide last week, and where right now we have absolutely no cases in this community, it would seem to me that our 6 to 12 kids could be without masks this summer.
What's driving the concern about continued masks for K-5, though, given our current metrics? I mean, if the state's encouraging, that's kind of blanket across the full range of case rates across the state. And our case rate is so low or non-existent now.
Yes, I think it's probably just the vaccinations, that our younger kids haven't had the opportunity for vaccines yet.
But the mask was, I thought the mask from our public health officials, the reason for the mask was to not spread to others. So having the mask as optional for the older grades, how does that work? You know what I mean? How does I don't know, I feel like in a community where we have 0 cases and we've had such low spread, and just a reminder for everyone, K through 5 kids are going into, they're allowed, and we're not seeing spread to them either,
Yes.
to go to grocery stores and department stores and restaurants, playgrounds with no social distance, and we're not seeing spread in our community amongst the K through 5 age group.
Yes, I don't
Yeah.
disagree with that. The only thing that I would say to that is, we really don't want to be in the business of asking families to present whether or not their children have been vaccinated. And likewise, we don't want to be in sort of the business of asking our teachers, and we really can't ask our teachers if they have been vaccinated or not. So the one thing that we had been thinking about was, if you had a K-5 teacher who hadn't been vaccinated working with our children, and I don't know if that's a concern for the community or not, which is why really we'll be working with Sean McAuliffe and our nurses to kind of get that health professional opinion on this as well.
Okay, yeah, that's good. I mean, I just want to make sure it's based on, real health guidance and not just that extra layer of precaution out of abundance of caution or just to be safe. You add this other layer that may be quite a burden for kids during the summer when they're free to not have masks the rest of the time.
Yes, so 6 to 12, when we say 6 to 12, those are really our rising 7th graders. So they're all kids who had the opportunity for vaccination, but our K-5s are kids who have not. So I know that there would be some families worried and some families not worried, which is, sort of why what you see on that slide is our thinking at this moment in time.
Understood, thanks.
Can I ask a further question, sort of following on Meg's? At one point in my life, I did a ton of research on creating a high school. And one of the things we looked at was facilities and temperature and when kids learn best and when they actually stop learning as well. And so if you have 6 to 12 students in the middle of the summer in a non-air conditioned room, how hot does that room get? Because especially if these are ESY students, they're already kids who need some extra help of some kind. Is there any data on the rooms that are going to be used? How likely, how high the temperature is going to get in those rooms? Whether, it might actually really affect their learning? I'm just concerned about summer and no air conditioning.
Yeah. In past years, has ESY been down on the first floor? I think, one of the things that is nice about this building is if you go down a flight because it's below grade, it's always a lot cooler down there than right now it's not very cool in here. And, it's 7:30 at night, so you can imagine what it's like at noontime when all of the sunshine is coming through those windows. So this would not be, I think, the best location, but downstairs it's usually pretty palatable down there.
Okay.
Is there any air conditioning in this building?
I believe that there is.
I believe there is as well in
But not
some
the library.
spaces. I'd have to confirm with
Okay.
Mr. Person. He really knows
Yeah.
better than I do.
It popped into my head because I was thinking about how you had said the library over at the middle school is air conditioned. I didn't know if this library was air conditioned and we just don't use it at night because it's not set up that way.
There's that.
Or if it just isn't air conditioned because it didn't hit the budget or whatever when the high school was being built.
Yeah, Mr. Person really would be the one to confirm that with.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Kavanaugh, what is the duration of ESY? When does it end?
Is it 5 weeks?
August 5th is the end of the 5-week, August 12th is the end of the 6-week. So if you're in intensive special needs, you do 6 weeks.
Okay.
Okay. And my last slide is just a thank you, really to everyone, administrators, faculty, taxpayers, nurses, all of our support staff, custodians, cafeteria workers, and our families. I think that we were a pretty good team throughout this school year. As a school district, we are really grateful to the families who took on role of whether they were teachers, facilitators, coaches, motivators, but you were probably something on those at-home days. And so it's really been a pleasure to work alongside of all of those folks. And thank you to you as a committee, too. It wasn't easy for you all year. So just wishing people a wonderful summer. And that's all.
Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you to you, too.
It's a very upbeat report, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's encouraging to see what next year is going to likely look like.
No
so.
masks.
So I have a very brief report. It was a very short period of time that I was reporting on. I don't want to feel like I'm maybe not quite up to some of the prior reports, but just to say I approved warrant 21-076, which has been included in your packet. School committee office hours, I know that we had talked about doing the listening tour, and I think that's a little bit more complicated than maybe what we can put together for in this moment right now, but we can talk about dates. I did want to look at, though, doing just a regular school committee office hours at the farmer's market, because when we did that a couple years ago, we had a lot of people stop by. I was looking at, because they can only take so many non-vendor people at the farmer's market. So I was looking out into July, possibly the 18th or the 25th, because it's on a Sunday. I don't know if those dates look okay to people. I will inquire with the farmer's market folks to see if that works, and then we can figure out how we want to. I think the last time we did it, we rotated in shifts so that everybody that was interested and able to spent some time doing it. So
That's great. Should we bring our alpacas for others to pet?
something to be a draw. If we have alpacas available,
Yeah, thanks, okay.
that'll be great. And then the school committee summer workshop training, I had sent out around some of the MASC resources, but I think for right now, my question is more about scheduling in terms of, do we want to tack that on to the beginning part of a meeting so that it would be like in lieu of like an executive session starting at 6 and going that way? Or do we want to make it a separate standalone meeting? And that would be my...
So if we added an hour to the beginning of the meeting, that would mean 4 hours in the summer, and that would be the equivalent of a half day, sort of?
So it would depend on the length of the meeting. My hope would be that if we added a training on, we might be able to make that shift some of what might be in that meeting to other meetings, so it wouldn't be a 4-hour.
Shouldn't be so heavy in the summer if we're meeting
Oh,
every other
no,
week.
I was more speaking about the training itself. I was
Okay,
saying
gotcha.
if it's an hour
Yes.
every meeting, let's say, then it's a
So I
4-hour
don't know
training.
if we could do, because if we're looking to bring somebody from MASC out, I would think it would be maybe rather doing like a 2-hour at the beginning of a meeting kind of a thing, rather than doing I don't know that we would be able to get them to come out to 4 different meetings.
Okay.
But I can, kind of what people are most interested in.
I think for me, either way would work,
Okay.
as long as it's not like 8 hours on a Saturday.
It's
2
actually
hours, one
it's an
time.
overnight. We're going to start at 8 Saturday and end 8 Sunday.
In a campground, right?
In a campground, yeah.
Yeah, that would be okay.
Okay. If people have any more thoughts on specific, because this is a scheduling issue, of either any of the ones that I sent out or other trainings that you're aware of. I know the visions training, because that's something we're supposed to do with the Youth Commission, would probably not be during the summer because they don't tend to do as much of their stuff over the summer. So that would be.
Can I ask a question? In the, a few.
Oh, sorry, no, I was aware that. Yes.
In the past, not this past summer, but the summers before, we've occasionally done during the weekday,
Right.
like daytime hours,
Right.
for sort of a more developmental, like a training. Is that at all something feasible for anybody or not? Like sometimes people have Fridays off in the summer. I don't know what people's schedules are like, but in past school committee configurations that has been accessible, it doesn't work for everybody. So I'm just asking.
It'd be very difficult to do daytime
Okay.
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah. I have every other Friday because of my weird work schedule, so that might be accessible, but other than that, it would be really difficult.
So evenings really the way to go. I was just curious.
In terms of evenings in the summer, do people's hours shift at all?
Can you start earlier?
Yeah,
Judy?
that's what I meant, was can we start earlier to avoid going
Oh, yeah,
too late? Okay.
6 or something, what do you mean, 5 or 6?
Is that something that would be accessible to you as well, or?
5:30-ish or so, yeah. I could.
All right, then we can come back to that. So that is all I have on that. Does anybody have liaison reports?
I do. I have a quick one. Sorry, Hop Coalition met, I think last week, but then I just will let you know that I attended 2 trainings that they were part of sponsoring. One was on mental health. It was with the Mental Health Collaborative with Abby Rosenberg and Denise Hildreth, primarily, who sponsored it, really about the language around mental health. It's mental health literacy. I don't know if you've taken the training, but if you have an opportunity, I highly recommend it. It puts words to a topic that not everybody has at their fingertips, and once you get the language, it just kind of makes it that much easier to talk about. So I did that, and I attended a forum for policymakers and lawmakers on, as did Dr. Kavanaugh, on cannabis and the impact of cannabis on youth. And it was a little terrifying, I have to say, for me, but it was really well done. They're going to share the recording, and when we get that, I can share it with you. I think it's worth watching, especially the beginning, that for me, that talked about the science of why it is different for people under 25 than it is for other people. So I don't know if you have anything else to add, but I found it to be very useful, very well designed training, and ultimately got to the point of policy making and what areas of policy might intersect cannabis. So when we're talking, maybe less for us, but in our town, when we're talking about zoning or things of that nature, it's kind of highlighting where we might want to consider how our policies are written. So it was a great training, and I will definitely share.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And I know we mentioned this at the last meeting, but since I don't think we're going to have another meeting before then, just mention that the Hopkinton Freedom Team is having the Pride Parade on the 26th.
A week from Saturday.
26th.
Yeah. It's a week from Saturday, right?
Yeah, it's a week from Saturday. So, yeah, anyone who's interested can contact Freya and see if there's still spectator spots.
That's great. It's great that they were able to open those up. Thank you. All right, then that moves us on to the F1 International Student Report. Ms. Tice, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. So I shared the slides with you as well. They should have been in your packet. But just some quick updates on our international student program. As you know, I think it was mentioned earlier in the budget, but it's something that we are really proud of outside of that and what it brings to our school and just enriches the classroom experience for the students coming here, but also our students. And given the challenges of this year, we were still able to enjoy that, I think. And so you might have seen this on your walk in. We have a bulletin board with all of the faces, although many of them have since left. Our seniors graduated and then they leave and go home, or, well, they usually go home for the summer. But of our 9 F1 and 1 J1 students, we had 6 Italian students, 2 Spanish students, 1 Brazilian, and 1 Swiss student. And some were here for 1 semester, some were all year. And we have a couple going on to university in the States. We have somebody going to George Washington, to Penn State, to St. John's in New York. And a couple that are not seniors are continuing on to private high schools in the country. And many of them are going home to either continue with high school or to attend university in their home countries. So it was sad to see them go. Typically we have so many activities, so many more than we have been able to have this year, and including our international night, which is one of my favorite nights of the year, and I think many of you have attended, and it's a great way for our students coming here to showcase some of their culture and what they bring to the classroom with them. So we were able to do, through our Ambassadors Club, some of the typical activities. With the restrictions opening up outdoors, we were able to do a pizza party, ice cream social. When things were all virtual, through Zoom, they did a paint night activity, virtual cookie decorating, where they gave all of the materials to the kids that signed up and then did it through Zoom, which was kind of adorable. They did a couple of movie nights as well as Zoom giving. Really not sure how that's pronounced, it's not a word. But typically they do Friendsgiving. It's been one of our favorite activities over the years because that was a club that I was heavily involved in prior to taking on this role, to show them what is Thanksgiving, what is it about, and then, the food, but the friend and family aspect of it as well. But they get involved through sports teams, all different kinds of clubs, and here are some pictures from our seniors. Actually, not just the seniors, all of our international students were able to attend the senior gala, which was fantastic. Typically, they all attend prom. It's a very American experience that we get to provide for them. So this was the American experience this year that they were able to enjoy, and it was a lot of fun. So we had great success at that event, but we were able to do a lot more than I think we had expected when they first came here. So for next year, we are back to actually our maximum. We say cap it at 15 F1 students and 1 J1 student, and they are all coming from Europe. Next year, we have 8 Italians, 6 Spanish, 1 French, and 1 Albanian student. We are very popular in Italy. Over the years, we've just grown in our number of Italian students. I think we get a lot of students from the same schools, so they talk, they really enjoy their experience here. We provide a lot of opportunities, and so more students wanted to come. So that's kind of the breakdown. And then just a couple of quick updates. Again, we've hit our maximum. We do cap it at that 15 and 1. And then the tuition numbers is just an update from the previous years. One of our big pushes right now, though, is our host families. A lot of our host families, our typical host families, have either their seniors have graduated and now they're empty nesters and they don't want to add another student, or people have moved. So if you are interested or you know someone that's interested, you can certainly put them in touch with me or with Andy Longoria. And I will say, none of this would be possible without Andy Longoria. I don't know if you know him very well, but he's been fantastic. He does a lot of the interviews, the applications. He's our liaison for this, and as well as Jen Pond, who works with our Ambassadors Club and really helps to provide this opportunity to connect our students. We look forward to getting back to some more of those in-person events and the things that we've grown to just enjoy over the years next year. So just a really quick update. I don't know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much. I think this is amazing, and I have a friend who had one of the Italian students, and she posted a lot about the graduation and everything. My question is, did they all get to go home? With all the weird travel restrictions and everything, they all got to go back to their
Some are
families?
still here. They can stay. There's restrictions on their visas. Some are still here, and they're hanging out until the end of their time that they're allowed to be here. We still have our underclassmen in the building as well. We have a couple of juniors and sophomores. But as far as I know, everybody that intended to go home has gone home. So
I'm glad to hear that.
yeah.
Can you just remind me the difference between the F1 and the J1?
Yeah, so that's something that I'm still trying to figure out a little bit. I think it has to do with funding. We are only allowed to have 1 J1 student at our school, and I think it's partially funded through government programs, whereas F1 tends to be more personal funds in their tuition. J1s are usually through exchange programs as well.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much for that. Anybody else? Question? So then we have you up on our agenda as well on high school intent to travel.
Yes.
Multiple times.
Yes. So I have 4 trips, and I can go in the order that they are listed, and all the materials, again, were provided in the packet. But these were trips that were previously approved either for last year, for the spring of 2020, or this spring 2021. There was a lot of planning for those. So I can go through each one of them specifically, but the first one on the list is to Germany and Switzerland, and that is being proposed by Catherine McCahill and Connor Zanini through the science department, with an emphasis on STEM classes, and kind of seeing how the principles they learn in class are applied in real life. And so the itinerary is listed in there, but they're going to Berlin, Freiburg, Lucerne, and Entelbusch. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce those. But they're looking to keep it at 12 students to keep it capped there, and that will be April break of next year. And while the dates are listed as, I think it's the 16th through the 24th, those are approximate. I will say that all of these dates are approximate because it does come down to airlines and what flights are available to get there for the breaks.
So, quick question about
Yes.
that, if I may. If the dates may be moving, might that involve any days that kids would be out of school?
The goal is no. I will say that I think that has happened in the past, but if anything, it's usually they fly overnight. So like they'll bring their bags here, store them here, and then they leave after school. The attempt is for them to not ever miss school.
Yeah, I'm just curious, like, presumably this is like the teachers you mentioned are science teachers, and the travel involves like visiting scientific and manufacturing operations or something? What type of activities would fall under STEM?
Yeah, so they do visit I forget what type, I want to make sure I get this correct. There's a power plant that's involved. I know that they do that. They talk about agriculture, local agriculture. Sustainable living, they go into the Black Forest and they talk about sustainable living within the Black Forest, as well as they do discuss the effects of global warming. They go to the base of the Alps. It says that they're at the Entelbusch biosphere, and they look at a nuclear bunker. So they look at different forms of energy and how they're being used in these areas in Europe.
Interesting. Thanks.
Yeah.
You always sound interesting.
I know. I wish I could go.
Oh, great. And I have a question that really refers to all of those trips. They're quite expensive for each student. I mean, the one to Germany is $3,930. And so the families have to come up with that money?
They do, and I do know that, so all of them are through EF, Education First, it's a program, company that we've used for so long. They have payment plans where it can be done monthly, and students also, I believe that there are programs to do fundraising, although that's not done through the school. I think that's something that is done through Education First. But yes, that is provided by the family.
So it's rather limited who gets to go.
I think in a way it can be, but I also know that we have trips that run almost every year, minus what we've experienced now. So I think that's something that people have considered in the past, of you can go on a senior trip and they start preparing for that early on in their high school careers, knowing that there will be something their senior year.
One more question that applies to all of them too is, are these open, like this one you mentioned, and there's the other three, this one was like science and STEM. Do they reserve spots especially for students at a certain level in science, or is this open to anyone, maybe even somebody who hasn't yet taken science or excelled at it but is still interested?
This is open to all students. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Definitely focusing on science, but.
And question also, because it looks like they're all EF tours, is that right? And we have had experience with EF, I know, before. Were we able to resolve anything that was left hanging over from trips that were canceled due to the early on in the pandemic?
Yes, fortunately, EF has, I think, taken a look at their refund policy as well. So there are policies in place that if we were to approve them and kids signed up now, they would be able to refund by a certain point, and then after that there are stages. So they would be able to get a full refund in the fall if the school for some reason said we're not going anymore, or there are other concerns, health related or for whatever reason. I know that, for example, the other Europe trip, the World War II one that was supposed to run, they have replaced all of the seniors with underclassmen so that the seniors could get I'm not sure if it was full, but most of their trip refunded, and replacing it with other students. And I think that everything that happened really caused EF to be a little bit more lenient in those policies and to make accommodations.
Do you shop around for different educational travel companies?
I will say that I'm not sure, just because these are presented by the staff. So Catherine McCahill was the one that found this and then presented it to us, and we go through it and decide that we think it's worthwhile. I know that in the past we've used other ones, but EF tends to be what we lean towards.
They're quite pricey. Might be worth reinvestigating some of the travel companies who help students, because I just don't like the fact that you have to have $4,500 to do a 10-day trip. And I think that only allows the most privileged students to go, even for those families who can pay monthly, however much that would be. So I find it very distressing.
Yeah, I know, like with the China trip that happened last time, it's a little bit different because they were only scheduled once every 4 years, but kids planned for years, mowed lawns or, did whatever they did for their fundraising, because they had the advance notice. I don't know how aware all of our freshmen are about future possibilities. I mean, everything gets announced, but I don't know if it actually penetrates the brain and they really think about it. But when you do have advance notice, it's helpful, and a lot of the parents organize fundraising, but it is expensive.
Is there a motion on the first trip, which is the Switzerland and Germany trip?
I'll make a motion to approve the intent to travel for Switzerland and Germany.
Okay, so motion by
Second.
Amanda, second by Joe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
No.
opposed? So
No.
4, and are there any abstentions? Okay, so 4 aye and 1 no. Okay, so that brings us on, do you want to talk a little bit about the Thailand trip?
Yes, so the Thailand trip is being run by Charlotte Shire, who's one of our science teachers focusing on environmental science, and Sam Breen. She's an English teacher, and this is a little bit more interdisciplinary in its outlook, kind of bringing all of that together as well as history. And I mean, what stuck out to me is they get to actually visit. They changed the itinerary a little bit to be able to visit a school that Sam Breen previously taught at. I don't know if you know that prior to working at Hopkinton High School, she spent a year teaching in Thailand. And so they're continuing a connection with that school, or they're trying to create this connection with that school there. So our students will be able to see a school day in Thailand as well. But they'll be going to 3 major cities there, and they'll get to go to an elephant nature park, which is kind of cool, but it is very interdisciplinary. They're doing cooking, they're looking at art, they're exploring architecture and the buildings and the city, and they get to ride in a tuk-tuk and going to museums. It's going to do a little bit of everything while they're there. And again, this is for next year, but it is February break. So those are the proposed dates, although, again, those are not set in stone.
Question? Go ahead.
Dr. Kavanaugh, following the some of the trips we've had in the past where the flights have been disrupted for weather or whatever, did we ever change our guidelines to request non-Sunday flights? Or am I making that up? Is that something we kind of thought about? Because if the Sunday flight is missed, then it puts you into Monday, and then we have teachers out and students out.
I think we discussed that, but I don't know if we've acted upon it.
I know that if the chaperones are out on the Monday or flying through the night on the Monday and they have to teach, I mean, that's another cost that to the district that we hadn't thought about. So I don't know if there's any way to encourage a non-Sunday flight for all of these trips. I know that they price them out and they try to get the best price possible, which often means maybe Sunday night or Sunday late, but it does really give us very little flexibility for bad weather, delays, etc.
Any other questions on this specific trip? Is there a motion that anybody would like to make if there are no more comments or questions on this trip?
I'll make a motion to approve the trip to Thailand,
Okay.
the intent to travel for the trip to Thailand.
So motion by Amanda, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Leah, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 4 aye and 1 opposed, so that also passes. And then, I've lost my place in terms of the next one is the Europe one, is that right?
Yes, so this one was being proposed by Steven Spiegel in our history department, and this one is based on World War II. They will be visiting London, Paris, different parts of France as well, and then over to Germany. So they're going to be following, while they're looking at different museums, the Churchill War Room, the Imperial Museum, and visiting those sites, really based in history. They're hoping to connect to our world history curricula as well as U.S., talking about our impact, our country there, as well as Facing History, which is a class that is taught by Mr. Spiegel in the history department. So again, it's open to all students, but it really does have that history focus because all of our students will have taken those classes.
Well, it's open to all of the privileged students.
Any questions specific to this trip?
Well, I do have one more. Learning from the past. When I look at the modes of transit, I think I see boat, and it's pretty much everything but a camel in many of these trips. So the other thing that came up in previous trips, and I guess I'll just pass this on to you for the trip coordinators, was communication plans. So if something happens and there's no Wi-Fi or no phone connection, or or if there's limited Wi-Fi, is there a communication plan, especially when you're in maybe more remote areas, so that we can relay to someone in the U.S. who can then get in touch with all the families, or that kind of thing?
Mm-hmm. If I may, we did add that
We
to
did,
the
right.
policy. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
So not specific to this. I'm just stating out loud that I have a similar discomfort to Meg. I am approving them because I don't want to deny it for a child, but I would love to see some kind of scholarship thing or something to help other kids go, because I do agree that it seems unfair that a child who has less means may not be able to enjoy one of these trips.
Especially a child who loves history, who hears about this trip, has to live with that comparatively negative experience of not being able to go.
So that is something I think that we could take up to look at how either fundraising, scholarship, or other means that we could look at policy-wise could make trips more accessible to students, because I agree, that's a tough
It's cruel.
situation.
It's cruel. So.
That is something that I would also be interested in discussing, looking ahead.
Yeah, maybe, for example, we heard last meeting from HEF. They got grant applications. I wonder if any of these would fall in the category that these programs could apply for a HEF grant in future years, for example, to defray some of the costs.
Right. Or just research other grant sources for it, or do some community pool for it, so not just the rich kids get to
make
go.
scholarships available for the different trips.
We've been very good, right, with our administrative team finding lots of different sources of grants on other curriculum issues. So this is a little above and beyond. To me, it looks a little more.
It is, but it's not totally unprecedented
Yeah.
that there. I know it's a smaller scale, but other trips that have been taken in the district, things when they've gone to New York and D.C., there have been ways that money has been found to assist. That there might be some resources in the community that we'd be able to tap for looking going forward.
It would be something that the class funds want to, the class officers want to discuss. Like every year they'll fund, X dollars out of the class fund or something to support their own classmates.
Yeah, I mean, some organizations do have kind of a footnote on these kind of programs to say if you find yourself in need of financial assistance, talk. I don't know if we have a mechanism to fulfill such a promise, so I don't imagine there is a footnote like that, but it would be good to have some kind of backstop in place.
And I think what you mentioned, Amanda, about starting in 9th grade and thinking about a senior trip, I know that at least for me, I really didn't have a sense of that. I just knew these trips happen, but it never occurred to me to think of it as, okay, this may be a great senior thing, so maybe framing it like that for freshmen, and then bringing in a lot of opportunities to be able to fundraise throughout the years, to be able to, set it up as a goal that they know to think of it as a goal, because I'm a very disorganized mom, so I wasn't aware. So I just wanted to put it out there because I didn't want Meg to think she was the only one uncomfortable with some of the stuff. I just don't want to deny kids this year, but I want to make sure we have plans for next year.
Or if there's a way that we identified something that maybe something could be done for kids that are already interested in it or not of the financial means to commit to it right this minute.
Yeah.
Right, and I'm a little hesitant to embrace this idea that they should start raising funds when they're in 9th grade for their senior trip, because they might need those funds for food. And who are we to think they can put that money aside for their European adventure? I mean, it should be a community-supported thing. It shouldn't be the class, because the class members, officers don't need to know what students can afford to go. I think that it would be great if we could just look at this in more detail.
Yeah.
Thoughtfully, instead of isolating the privileged even more.
Agree. Okay, so we have not yet approved item D, is that correct?
Right. We have not yet approved.
Is there a motion for item D, the intent, Hopkinton High School intent to travel to Europe?
I will move. So moved.
Motion by Leah. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Second by Joe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So we have 4 and 1 on that, and it also passes. The final one I see here is to Peru.
Yes. So this Peru trip is being run by Lauren Polanski through the World Language Department, and it's geared towards Spanish students, and it's really a way for them to get to practice their skills on the ground. Not only is it based on the language, but they're also going to be going into the Amazon. There's some opportunities there to talk about ecosystems and also to visit with an indigenous tribe. So it really focuses on the anthropology aspect that a trip like this can provide, as well as the language, because it is expected that students are practicing while they're there. So it's really the best way to learn a language is to use it and to be immersed with it, and this is one way for our students to do that. So this is also next year over April break and through EF.
Sorry, I think I probably didn't do the math before. So this one says April vacation, 11 days. Do we have 11 days in April vacation?
I believe we have Good Friday is the day before April vacation.
Yeah. It may be. I don't know. Because Easter, it depends where Easter falls.
So it does say that the 15th is a day off, which would be, I think, probably
Yes.
for Good Friday, and then that, so we've got 7, 8, 9, 10. How many days did you say?
It says 11 days.
It says 11.
So that would require then a day. I didn't look at
But
the
it
map
does,
closely.
it says the 14th. I will say on trips that I have done in the past, when it does say Thursday, I cannot guarantee, but I think the goal is for it to be an evening flight, an overnight,
Gotcha.
sometimes a red-eye kind of deal. But we do not have school that Friday.
So they could be leaving on the 14th
Yes.
and not missing any school by returning on the 24th.
Yes.
Good catch on the math. Questions specific to the Peru trip? Is there a motion related to the Hopkinton High School intent to travel to Peru?
So moved.
So motion by Leah, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Joe, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
So we have 4 ayes, 1 nay, and that also passes. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you all very much. It's nice to see you in person.
Very interesting.
Nice to see you in person. So that brings us down to item F, which is the expense transfer request.
Thank you. So just really a follow-on to what we discussed in terms of the financial report. So as the year closes, of course, the timing of the closing and school committee meetings, your policy DBJ allows for those transfers between funds. We discussed really kind of with the financial report what those would look like in terms of non-use of the international athletic preschool revolvings, building use, those funds that I had mentioned earlier. So this gives me the authority to do what needs to be done to close the budget.
So we are looking then, questions, are there any questions on that?
No, I'd
Comments?
like to make a motion to authorize Mrs. Rothermec to do what she needs to do.
Second.
Okay, motion by Meg, a second by Leah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So that brings us down to item G, which is the Hopkinton High School START Program donation. Dr. Kavanaugh, that is you.
Yes, so we were contacted by Lisa Winter, who runs the START program at the high school, and a couple of families have made a couple of very generous donations. We have 2 Yogi Bobine chairs, and those are actually worth $538. So I was surprised, I didn't realize that that's how much those would be worth. And another family who anonymously donated a $200 Amazon gift card. So we are simply looking for you to approve those very generous gifts for the START room.
I make a motion to approve the gifts.
Motion by Meg,
Second.
second by Leah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So that passes unanimously with thank you to the donors. So that brings us down to the annual norms review. And just to kind of give a little bit of historical perspective on this, every year we have the opportunity to change our norms as our group of 5 would like them to be. They should fit how we feel like we want to operate. Obviously, we don't want to do anything too crazy, but in the packet was included the norms as they existed last year, and they also existed identically the year before. I would like to at least have some discussion. There were some considerations I know that people had of things they wanted to be added, and do you have some,
I did make copies for you of
fabulous.
the sample protocols from MASC.
And I know we spent a lot of time when we went over it in I'm looking at Meg because you were part of that group in 2018, but as Joe and Leah were not here, some of these maybe, as we tested through time and been through kind of a very different year, might be worth looking at and thinking, how do we want to run our meetings, the way we communicate, the way we operate as a committee to best suit our needs. So that's, Amanda, you had found this nice MASC piece that Dr. Kavanaugh just passed around as well.
What I liked about, I mean, it's a sample of what we could have, but what I liked about it too was the back couple pages that I think we had done with Dorothy Presser, Meg, when she came. It's a way to kind of assess if our norms worked for us individually, kind of looking through and thinking, oh, you know what? The getting questions answered about items on the agenda didn't really work for me, or sharing expertise on issues, I didn't feel like I could share my expertise enough. Like if you look at these, it was a really good prompt, which honestly I have to admit I didn't appreciate at the time because I was too new. But now having done more of this, I think, I don't know if you want to accomplish the norms tonight, but it might be a good, sort of gut check for us.
Yeah. I don't think we need to pass them tonight, but to just have that conversation and go through and consider all of these things and how they impact how we do things. So does anybody have any thoughts? Do you want to start with just going through the?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I agree with Amanda. I think that these last 2 pages are great prompts. Like when you ask me, do you like the norms as they are, or do you have suggestions? It's like, well, you're okay, sure. But this really prompts you to think through everything, which I have concerns with most of them.
All right. Well,
so, I don't know, just reading through the norms that we've used to date, my perspective, and I guess part of it coming from other committees where there's a lot of rancorous debate and discussion. And if you look at the norms that we've been adhering to, several of them kind of direct you towards find consensus. It doesn't say avoid conflict directly, but it almost does. And I think it's great. Like tonight we had to vote where not everybody agreed, and it generated some discussion, and we're open to that. And we've had that over the past year too. It would be nice if our norms reflected that as a goal,
Instead of reaching consensus, more about responsible conversation when consensus doesn't exist about the topic at hand.
Yeah, I find it almost superfluous to say we must run by consensus because obviously you need 3 votes for it to pass, right? But by saying run by consensus, it's putting another weight on the side of, hey, don't disrupt the flow. We're going towards consensus here. And I think sometimes it's good to have a divergent opinion, as we've had in meetings the past year, and for our norms to reflect that. Another one I think I'd like us to think about is preparation for meetings. I know we're all bound by open meeting law, so we can't call each other and ask, hey, what do you think about this? That's done in the meeting. But we have made a practice of individually calling the superintendent if we have questions or need clarification. And while I respect that for some of the efficiencies it brings, it also can lead to, first, a great loss of time for our superintendent who's supposed to be running the district, not the school committee. And secondly, it can lead to, if the questions and answers end up with individuals solidifying their opinion before the meeting, it can actually limit creative, free-flow discussion and mind-changing during the meeting.
Right.
So that's one I'm not sure how to word that as a norm, but if there were a way to think about that.
So I would agree with that, and that's something I've kind of tossed around in my head because a lot of what we have had to do this past year is because we have been hopping from one crisis to another and trying to manage all the changes that were this year. We didn't have some of the ability to reflect a little bit on how we are doing some of these things. Also, meeting almost every week.
Right.
It made it difficult because the packets didn't get out until sometimes Tuesday, and it didn't give a lot of time to reflect on it in the same way. I like the one piece I like about what we have done is that it does give the heads up to the superintendent of questions that we have, so that if there's data that we need from Mr. Person or somebody else that works in the district, it allows her to get the data for the meeting. I agree with you. I think it would be better in terms of efficiency to have it shared here rather than for all of us to have
Different pieces.
different pieces, because that leads to unequal pieces of information. Obviously, if you have kids in a particular school, you might know more about something naturally, but if we've each had different questions that we've asked Dr. Kavanaugh on the side, we don't have the benefit always, if we didn't get the answers together, of you ask your question, she, even if you send it to her in advance, say, a couple days before the meeting or whatever, she gets the information, and rather than giving it to you in that moment, brings it to the meeting. It gives a more authentic back and forth, I think, because then I say, oh, hey, in my head, that leads to another question.
Yeah, I
That makes
find,
sense.
I like that approach. I find otherwise we may have 5 individual deliberations. That means that we're not fully deliberating in public.
Right. And it's less transparent.
Right.
And also probably less efficient for you, most of all, but just a different kind of conversation. I don't know if others have any thoughts on that.
Well, I think part of that is the handshake with the superintendent, because I think it is important to surface the questions. Like sometimes I'll send questions say, you don't have to tell me now, but heads up, I'm going to ask this, and maybe because then, well, let me finish the thought. Then Dr. Kavanaugh or whomever can get the information so that they're prepared to answer at the meeting. And, if we feel that individuals getting answers ahead of the meeting isn't really open and transparent, then we could put that in our norm. At least you'll know what the questions are, and we can then ask our questions live. But I do like, because sometimes you have to go find out the information. Like sometimes, Dr. Kavanaugh will be sitting here and won't have that data. So if we can, it used to be in the years before the pandemic that we got the packets by Friday. So, off of the work week, when you could think you could spend an hour to, kind of go through, get your questions, send them off by Monday, I think was our agreement. We haven't had the luxury of operating that way this year. It's been Tuesday to Thursday, and who can read the packet between Tuesday and Thursday? Obviously, it's really hard. But getting the questions surfaced, for me, is important, and then maybe just in our norms agreeing what our expectations of Dr. Kavanaugh are. We tried 2 years ago, Dr. Kavanaugh started putting, one list together, just kind of putting them all in one doc so we could all kind of see, what are people asking? But then we were concerned that wasn't consistent with open meeting law. So maybe that's something we could double check with Michelle. Because that was kind of nice.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's a different side of what I was raising, and to build on what you're saying, it wouldn't necessarily have to be a list of answers, but if I were to contact Dr. Kavanaugh a couple of days before and say, hey, I have these questions about the high school construction project, you wouldn't need to come with my question and answer, but in your presentation, you would make sure it was covered. And that can actually lead to a more efficient meeting where I don't have to ask my 3 questions, so they were just answered in the presentation. That can work that way too. But my main point was that I want to think about doing it differently so that we actually deliberate in the meeting, And also, while we might have a norm or aim of asking questions in advance, we don't want to word it in a way that penalizes us for asking questions that happen to come to our mind during a meeting, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Because that through the deliberation, we may each get new questions. And that's okay that we don't always have an answer, too. Sometimes things are not optimally efficient, but at least we're doing it publicly and getting answers.
We'll have to allow more time.
Yeah.
You know, deliberation will take time, so.
True.
I really like this worksheet, and I remember going over it, and I think I was in a little working group with Jen. Weren't we in a working group?
We definitely.
But I don't think we ever really brought the whole group together, or maybe it was so late in the day that I don't remember because I was tired or hungry. And I hate to ask for another meeting, but wouldn't it be nice to talk about this when we're fresh?
Well, so, I do think, yes, that we're not going to solve this tonight.
Because I think it's fascinating, and I think it helps clarify in our minds what our mission is here, and how we should communicate with each other, or with everyone else, and what our actual goals are. And it wouldn't be bad to remind ourselves after this crazy year. And the wording of number 2 just stymies me. How did we do that?
We spent a lot of time wordsmithing it, and we might have over-wordsmithed it.
Well, number 2, can we just take a moment? There's a possessive pronoun here that really troubles me. When rendering decisions about any topic, school committee members will consider all stakeholders and how their decision impacts their roles in all our schools. Whose roles? Who's the there for their roles?
Yeah, it sounds like you're talking about stakeholder decisions instead of, okay, got it.
Oh, how the stakeholders'
But the
decisions, or how
decision
the
is the school committee members' decision.
School committee member.
Anyway, it would be nice to return to those and have a conversation. I really liked it when we could meet in the day because I think better in the morning. But I know we can't, unless we meet at 6:30 in the morning.
I don't think that will at 6:30 a.m.
Well, we're used to that for the
Yeah,
You guys are hardcore.
One thing is, I know some of you have had training on these spreadsheets, on these sheets. We have not, and so some of these are not clear to me. Like when it's so that's I agree with Meg. I would love to have an actual discussion over these because, like, when I read sharing expertise on issues, what exactly does that mean, and why is it in here, and why would this ever be a policy, and how is it viewed as a problem when understanding why it's in this sheet when we weren't walked through it originally.
Are you looking on the
The last 2 pages.
The last two pages.
which one?
I view these more as like, if I don't understand it and it doesn't apply to me, but if there's one that strikes me, then I'll comment on it.
You know, we haven't really talked about our training yet, but I mean, we could bring Dorothy back to do this, like, for real, if we decide on training, if we don't, we didn't write this document's from like 2013, I think.
We could just discuss it as a group, too.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
So this says updated August 20th, 2018 for the norms. I swear that we talked about this when
We
I
did,
first
but we
got on
didn't
the
change
board.
it.
Oh,
That's why it's,
okay.
We had so much else going on.
Yeah,
it was trial by fire at the beginning last year.
yeah,
That's
okay.
right.
But some of the other things that are not in our norm document, but are things that are considered on here, are things like the way we sit. And I know we rearranged back closer to where we were, but that's something that, in the summer, we'll meet at HCAM, so it's a little bit different anyway. They have a nice, the table's in better shape.
Half moon.
U-shape,
isn't it?
yeah.
But even in terms of where does it make sense for like Dr. Kavanaugh to be sitting versus, to make it feel good. And we don't have to have the answers to that right now, but.
And under other norms, beliefs, and protocols that school districts may consider, I mean, to Joe's point here, there is like creating environments for full and free debate, right? Or civil discourse in a safe environment, addressing issues and avoiding the ad hominem attack, right? So making sure that when you are having a strong argument, you're arguing the point, not the person, like, so that kind of thing, I think is really interesting that's in here that we don't have in our norms.
Yep, so I'm going to make a note of that.
The footnotes on this page, I would read these. These are
Yeah, I've been
interesting.
reading
Yeah, the footnotes are really.
Thank you for pulling this out.
Yeah, this is really useful.
If I may make just one suggestion, I know you've been talking about a facilitator, I know we've had Dorothy Presser come in the past, but one of the names of facilitators, Dr. Anthony Bent, he's been a school committee member, I believe, in Wellesley, a superintendent in Shrewsbury, so he brings sort of both lenses, and our, I think, interaction and experience with him is he's been a wonderful facilitator,
Great.
if you're interested in
Is
having
he,
one.
is he through MASC, or where is he out of?
Well, he's more closely associated with MASS,
Okay.
but he's been a school committee member himself. So he's served
Yeah.
dual roles.
Possibility as well.
Just one more point about the debate
Yes,
thing.
please.
Sorry, I know I keep harping on it, but one of the really big things that we all know is that tone policing is a way that prevents sort of underrepresented people from being able to express their opinions well. And so now that just brought it up, my head is like on the consensus piece and on the, let's all, like that, he's right. That feels like it would discourage somebody who may join the committee who may have a different tone of voice when arguing these things, maybe more passionately, etc., from feeling like they are able to express themselves correctly. So.
Thank you.
Okay. So people want to keep these churning in your mind, and we'll come back to them.
This would be really fruitful for us to spend some time with. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. Tim, I gotta scroll back up here. All right, sorry. So that brings us down to the MASC November conference, which one of our previous chairs, Mina Barath, had ensured that there was funding in the budget so that if we wanted to go, any individual that wants to go on the committee, there is funding for us to either attend virtually, because they're doing a hybrid version this year, or in person. It is in Hyannis, so it's, I have found a lot of really useful, good workshops there. It's also an opportunity to connect and network with other school committee members in other districts to hear what they, what their experiences are and what has helped them moving forward. So in terms of, it's the 3rd to the 6th of November, but there is, and I would assume everybody got it in the mail as well, there is a significant discount if you know you're going to go, to get registered by July 15th, and typically we have Georgette,
Yes.
if you let Georgette know if you're planning on going.
It's worth knowing, too, that it usually takes place all day Wednesday, all day Thursday, all day Friday, and part of Saturday.
Oh,
Yeah, I was going
And
to
so
say. I
that
just looked that up.
complicates it for many of us who work. Is it a different rate if you register for the virtual?
I do
I
not know
don't
the
know
answer.
that answer.
Or if they, that would be so thoughtful, wouldn't it, if they offered access to the virtual and recordings of those for
Yes.
those of us who are working?
Makes sense.
So, and I don't know if they're going to offer virtual recordings to, and maybe they will since they're offering it virtually, but I was poking around on their website. There are a number of their trainings that are available virtually, there's a whole thing on Chapter 70 funding and meetings that have happened over the past year.
Yep.
The trainings they've done that are available virtually, so that's a nice
Right, that's the
piece to
boom
have.
of this.
Yeah, it is. Okay. So the next piece is the liaison roles. This is kind of looking at, I printed it because it's hard to. Just in terms of starting, are there any roles that people have been in the past year that you know that because of scheduling or otherwise that you don't want to continue with your role and you want to swap out for something else? Or on the other side of that, if there's something you feel like,
I think the planning committee role has been really difficult for me. I haven't really been able, I talked to Muriel kind of offline a lot, but I
Yep.
didn't really join the meetings, especially because the Hopkinton Freedom Team meetings are on Mondays.
Oh, gosh.
in
Yep.
Hampton. So,
So the planning board one.
Yep.
Okay.
And I have to say, I'm completely committed to the Irvine Todaro Committee. And I think I should always be the representative.
That could become more active.
Well, in the 3 years I've been on that committee, we have never met. And I am eager, I am really eager to meet the people. So if you could please sign me up again.
We will keep you in that role. I think Joe is probably right with discussions about potential uses back
I'm
there.
excited.
Good.
Yeah.
You're ready for, you've been training for this moment for
Training.
3 years.
Thank you.
So is there somebody who is interested in the planning board, and you don't, you can also look at the agenda and kind of think, this is something that's going to impact the schools, and be in touch with the chair that way, so that you don't have to go to every single meeting that's on top of the, and I'm not saying that to sell it to
No,
you,
no,
I'm
no.
just saying for everybody in
So,
terms of,
one thing that because of COVID, everything was weird, but I guess the planning board sets certain, like, goals or something, and sometimes the schools and the school buildings are involved in some of those goals, and so then you, as the liaison, are supposed to present when they talk about those things. Like, you're supposed to present on behalf of the school committee a little bit.
oh, wow, that's a lot of pressure when you first start.
Yeah, it was like, oh my God, I don't know. So I think it was just one, and I think it was growth. And they were asking me, like, in the middle of September when we were going through all that craziness, so they allowed me to put it off. But yeah.
I'd be willing to give it a try, the planning board liaison from the school committee, and reach out as needed and keep track of the agenda and interject as needed.
That would be great.
You'd be great. Yeah.
Thanks for your work on it last year. Sounds challenging.
Well, I feel like I didn't do a lot, mostly because of COVID and school committee. So.
It was a lot this year.
Yeah.
So in terms, if there aren't any others people want to pull out, I'll just start kind of at the top and we can go through and then shake it up at the end to see where everything's landed. Typically, some of these do fall to the chair, just in terms of the media spokesperson. Many years, there's not a lot to go to the media. I believe you did have a few opportunities to do that. In the same with the legislator liaison, but that is something also that goes hand in hand with the vice chair as well often. That we had met with Pooja together. Budget advisory group, obviously, and then policy review working group. That was a big commitment this year. I don't know how people feel.
I want to remain.
I loved it.
Yes,
I'm a morning person.
I'm not,
I
but I
will
still want to remain.
I will say that I think everybody should do a stint. Like, I do think, I loved it too, and I'd love to be back, but I think if you haven't done it, it'd be good to make room for somebody who wants to do it, because I think it is a place where you really get in the meat of some very important things. So,
Fair enough.
I have also done it
Okay.
in the past. I don't know.
so she's Joe.
Joe is shaking his head. He's saying nay. Not this
Yeah, not
year.
something I want on my plate this year. Thank you.
Maybe next year.
There's a couple of policies sitting there that I want to,
That you want to follow up.
yes.
The school committee meeting minutes review, in terms of that, is Georgette does a phenomenal job with the meetings, the minutes for our regular meetings, and there's very little that needs to be done for those. She will sometimes have like a question that she'll highlight in terms of what time we came in from executive session or something like that, but most of this, because she's within the schools and follows everything we do anyway, she's very capable of, and it does not require much. In the past, it required more because the person who was taking the minutes was somebody who was outside of the district. So it has been a huge bonus to have her. The bigger piece about that is taking the executive session minutes, which obviously we had a lot of This year, we typically do not. While I didn't mind doing it this past year, I would prefer not to continue because it's sort of hard to try to facilitate at the same time as taking minutes. Is there anybody who would have particular?
I mean, I'd be comfortable doing it. I've done it before in other.
Yeah.
things, and
I also think if we wanted to have two people do it, I don't know how people feel about that, to be able to rotate for the executive session piece of it, if that would make you more excited, unless you're really enthusiastic and want to do
Should I
it.
be your alternate?
Sure, you can be my
Okay.
alternate.
Can I ask a question about this? We used to use the voice recorder as well. Do we not need that anymore? Do we not, because
I think what Georgette's been doing is she just watches the broadcast.
right, so we don't need that.
I don't think so.
Okay. I never quite knew why we had it. It was there when I came on board, and I just noticed it's gone, so.
Bob would know far more than I would, but my recollection was that before everything was digitized, sometimes there were issues with the recording.
Okay.
And it was good to have I don't ever remember it happening while I've been on the committee, but I think it did perhaps many years ago.
And I'm sorry to make us step backwards for a moment.
Absolutely.
But Amanda, do you want to be on the policy? I mean,
Well, I've had an opportunity. I mean, I love it, but you guys are doing a
I've had an
great job.
opportunity too.
And
so
you're midstream, so I think carry on. But I do think, Joe, if you ever have a change of heart in a future year, it is a worthwhile.
Sure. It's,
I mean, I'm comforted by the fact that I know you're going to do so much of our work for us. That will just, ride on your coattails.
Thank you. Let's leave it as is.
Thanks. Okay.
So the school committee procedures working group, that was something I think we had a lot of steam for before we hit all of what happened this year.
I don't even know what it means.
I know what it means. I'm the one who put a comment in this that says it may fall to the chair to initiate. I think that's a more comfortable way for this to go. If you look at, we were just talking about the norms and things that weren't working, and there's I think one of the thoughts was, do we need a procedure? Do we need something? Or is there institutional knowledge we want to capture where we kind of all, from experience, know how to do X, but when someone comes on new, we don't have that documented officially. So this is an opportunity to document this. I had told Nancy that I intended to document, for example, the budget process and the timelines and deliverables, having done it this year. But I think if the chair or any committee member asked the chair to consider one, that would be enough to start. We could maybe spawn a working group on the fly or something.
Okay.
I don't know that anyone has an appetite to sit around writing procedures that are not necessary. That was just my experience from it.
Okay, that works for me. Just as long as people know if you feel like there's something that we want to revisit.
Do we have a new school member packet of any kind?
Yes.
New school
Okay.
committee member. So we actually, one year, Mina had done some work on that, and
I think it's hanging in our policy manual, and there I can
Okay.
find it. But
Yeah, because just like having something that's, like if you're new to government at all, right? Having something that says, in your very first meeting, you will be voting for positions. And, this is what you're voting for. And maybe watch some of the videos so you get a feel for the members so that so that you know who you feel might be best served in that position or whatever. Like, I think that would be
that's a really good point, because we do jump into this pretty quickly.
Yeah. And I know last year I was very blindsided because I was like, oh my God, I have to vote right now.
so you're volunteering to write that? Is that what you?
I've done it before.
what we have is a checklist for new members.
Yeah, well, I remember Mina gave me a big binder and said, here, she was excited to pass it off.
And you were excited to receive it.
Yes.
It is helpful to have a list, at least, of what you're supposed to, but maybe there's more we could do to that to be more helpful. It also is particularly helpful, I think, Mina had started work on it when she had been on the committee for a little over a year. Is that right? And that, because it's still fresh in your mind, what's challenging when you first start, but you've now got the knowledge that you didn't when you started. Okay. So, website working group is not currently.
We didn't do anything with that because we recognized that the IT department was very busy supporting learning remotely in person, and, bless you. We do have now funded a webmaster, and so if there are content pieces that we think belong on our page, or things that we want to work on, that was where this working group would come in. So my guess is that with the advent of the webmaster, we'd have an opportunity to do something here. But we specifically didn't want to pester IT. This is not the year.
No, not at all, but it is, you're right, with a webmaster coming on, there might be an opportunity.
Yeah, I think there's definitely navigation issues through, like, finding school committee stuff or finding, presentations, et cetera. So
Yeah.
I think helping to reframe that would be really good.
So do you, I see there's a thing that says it may fall to the chair, but do you feel like maybe with a webmaster coming on, we want to have specific people designated to take that on?
It might be worthwhile. I mean, it was Leah and me, or me and I. So I don't know if you want to say, we could have a brainstorming session to what we want to talk to the new webmaster about.
I was at one point in my life in charge of an entire UX department and dealing with how applications and websites and stuff should be, once again, navigated, touched, thought about based on who was going to hit them. So I am all for helping out with this.
Right, I'm all for it.
Right.
I shook my head.
So, I'm all for Amanda and Leah helping out too. Now that we have a full-time webmaster, though, or whatever the position is that includes that, it might be a little different than it was in the past, where you might want to give the professional staff a chance to bounce ideas off you, rather than us kind of say, here's how to do it, right? If we do have a professional IT person in that position now, whereas in the past we maybe didn't have full-time focus.
So yes, but I think also sometimes there are pieces that we recognize that are in terms of the user end,
Okay.
to be able to kind of, is that?
I mean, and a lot of it's just like information, and we don't have a ton on our page. Different school committee pages have more or less stuff.
Yeah.
Different district pages have more or less information. Where do we find emails from the superintendent? We used to have those, but we don't now. I mean, so it's not so much how to do it, but just what we would like to see out there. The webmaster will figure out where that's going to go.
And how to make search work.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so then that brings us down to the Irvine Tadaro committee that we know Meg is looking forward to. Tech, we did vote Dr. Kavanaugh to be the voting member. In the past, we have had an alternate school committee member. Is that who has been able to attend but not vote? Is that still, do they still do that?
Yes. Yep.
It's 8 a.m. in Walpole, so I don't know if anybody has.
Friday morning.
On a Friday morning.
Yes.
That does not work with my work schedule. I don't know if anybody else, but certainly you have done a lovely job of bringing it all back.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
The Marathon Fund Committee, Meg, that looks like that was you last year. Is that?
I'm happy to stay on if no one else is chomping at the bit.
Okay.
You don't have some funds left over every year.
And then the next several are the ones that we voted at the last, the campus planning, the ESBC, et cetera. Down to the next new one is the bridge, which I would like very much to stay on doing that, in part because of the entire last year. We weren't able to get to a lot of the policy things. We did work to connect resources through like Project Just Because and some other community resources with individuals that the guidance departments and school-based people would say, we have an individual who needs, boots or hats or mittens. We need snacks for, X number of kids. So not identifying them individually, but just asking for help with resources. But I would like, if that is okay with people, to hopefully bring back some policies with the policy, suggestions for the policy group in terms of things that are needed to make sure that those who are having difficulties because of socioeconomic factors are not falling through the cracks and missing things that they need.
I think that's super useful. So Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thrilled with the bridge, but the ESBC 2, I think we need a second person.
Oh,
I'm not sure
I
we got one.
feel like-
Did we vote 2 or not? I can't remember.
I feel like Leah was the second one.
Is Leah? Okay,
Yep,
great.
it just needs to be checked on here. I think what happened is we did the first round and then we came back to it because I had overlooked that.
So Joe is the voting member. I'm just updating it as we
Oh, thank you.
chat. Yeah.
That brings us down to the Youth Commission. I have done that over the past year. I don't know if there's somebody who has, it's a great commission. We have done different things over the years with the Youth Commission collaboratively. The visions training we did the year before last. They have worked with things like making the SAT prep accessible with us, and a lot of things obviously impact the population they're working with the population we're working with.
When are the meetings usually?
So they vary a little bit. They don't have a next meeting scheduled, so I can't tell you. It tends to be midweek in the evening, usually 7 o'clock, Tuesdays or Wednesdays. So are you interested in doing that? I don't want to.
Well, I mean, if you still want to do it,
no,
that's fine. I
I've
was
got a
trying
lot
to
of-
consider.
Nope, I don't want to, I want to, because I've done it, if you want to take that as an opportunity to do that, I would certainly,
Yeah, I can do that if it's, as long as it's in the evening,
it is in the evening.
and monthly meetings I can do.
Okay.
They can always send you the notes if you miss.
Yeah.
You can catch up with the chair.
Right, and also, we had talked about feeling like being able to tap into people when we're not able to make things, and that's, maybe I could be the alternate for you,
Okay.
just.
And the chair is Dawn
The
still?
chair currently is, yes, it's Dawn Ronan. They had some new appointments at the select board meeting this week. I don't know if they will change their leadership or
Okay,
not
but
this
I'll
year.
get a hold of Dawn just to tell her.
Great.
Joe, did you want an alternate on planning board? In the event that you have a conflict?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would, because it's not a sworn-in position, I'd be comfortable reaching out to anybody on the school committee who's able to attend on a particular night. But if you want to name someone, if somebody else wants to be secondary, we could do that.
Oh, do I want to? I know, I was just curious. I was just looking at the grid.
That's okay.
You speak up, your name goes on the roll.
I mean, I'll be your alternate if you want, but if you should,
And
I
then if
just
you
want to
can't, then I'll
encourage.
go to somebody else on the school committee.
I would just want to encourage us to use our alternates because we do get busy, and I don't think we don't cry uncle soon enough sometimes.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Good point.
So then the next couple typically fall to the chair, with the alternate being the vice chair. Would be the appropriations, the select board, and capital improvements. CPAC. Is that?
I'm happy to stay on.
That's great. I am happy if you need any help
Yeah, I think we need to
backing you up, alternate or even,
work on helping it.
yeah, I would be happy to help.
I was going to say the same thing. I have a lot of interest. I mean, looking forward to a good year with CPAC.
Okay. So that brings us down to HOP. Amanda, you have been doing HOP.
I have been doing HOP since its inception because I started out as the youth commission person for HOP. It meets monthly, around 4 o'clock usually. And so it could be an hour, it could be 2 hours, it depends. And there sometimes are projects that come up that are voluntary. So, I mean, I'm happy to continue, but if anyone has an interest, it's a really great coalition. There's a strong intersection between mental health and substance misuse, so there's a lot of talk about both. So it's, it's whatever, happy to continue, but if anyone else is interested, I'm happy to share too.
I love the work that HOP does. The timing is tricky for me just with after-school activities with kids and stuff.
It is,
And
it's
work
tough.
and that whole intersection of stuff in the afternoon. I don't know.
I'm happy to carry on.
Okay. Consider yourself carrying on. The Freedom Team, Leah,
Yes. Absolutely.
I assumed, but I didn't, And then I had skipped over communications because it's not currently active. So we don't, in the Sustainable Green Committee, I believe we voted on. You're the guy. All right, so
He's the guy.
in that case, that brings us through this list. There could be things that pop up throughout the year that we can visit, but I would seek, if people are comfortable, a motion to approve the liaison, accept the liaison roles for the 21-22 school year.
So moved. Second.
Motion.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
we're in discussion.
Yes.
I haven't, I don't know if anyone else has, I haven't looked to see balance across the five of us. I know often when we get through all these X's, we kind of look and say, well, Nancy has 12, and, Amanda has 3.
Nancy always has.
I'm just saying, if anyone cares, I haven't done that review, but.
I mean, that is one thing that's very clear, and I don't know if it's just part of being chair, but when I look at these liaison roles, I think, wow, I can't be chair, right? Because the amount of X's with like 3 to 4 hours here, 2 hours there, 3 hours there, and so I think if we want to discuss it at some point, I think we can rebalance some of that. I don't think the chair has to take on so much, unless obviously the chair wants to. So I just think that's something we should discuss at some point to make it kind of more equitable for the chair as well.
And to make it more palatable for people joining the committee,
Yeah, yeah.
knowing that it's balanced.
Good point.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you get a new member who has like expertise in public relations or something, and why would they not be suitable for that role? But for this go-around, I'm comfortable with what we selected because each of us seems comfortable with what each has taken on. Whether one has taken on more, that was their choice,
So, and I do really like the idea of the alternates, and I hope that people will feel comfortable being able to say this, this week, this month is tough, whatever's going on, and seek that support. So, all right, so we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so those are all set for now.
Ask a quick question. Will you now submit these to the town so they can update?
So only the ones that are, they don't actually keep track of all of our liaison roles. Only the ones that require, like the youth commission and stuff like that, I can reach out to the specific chairs of the committee just to let them know.
Irvine Todaro hasn't been updated since you were on that committee, and I've
Is it
served
still-
for 3 years.
I will make sure that they take my name off that.
Well, I've just thought,
Yeah. All right, so I'll go through the town's website and see if there are any other places that it has not been updated. All right, so that brings us down to the school committee calendar. There are a couple of places that I had discussed. I am aware, for example, that it looked like on August 5th, there might be 2 members who would not be able to be in attendance. So I was going to propose, if this worked for, I think it's having 3 people in a meeting makes it not nearly as productive. So if we could shift that and do the 12th and the 26th instead. Does not help?
But not for me.
Okay.
But if it helps get you 4, that might be good enough.
Okay, so is, for the rest,
12th might be tricky, but, no, I could do it. I'll just stay up.
which is trickier for you, the 12th or the 26th?
26th of what?
Oh, sorry, August.
12th is not possible.
The 12th is not possible?
Right.
Okay, and that's difficult for you as well?
I
So
won't
do
be
we
on
want to
an
look?
airplane. I think I can do it. It'll just be the middle of the night, but I can do it.
Okay.
I can do it.
Okay.
I can do it.
I'm trying to think of how else to do it so that we're not meeting back-to-back weeks in the summer, was more my,
Yeah.
It's a good objective. Yeah.
Would the day of the week matter for you?
No, the 5th and the 19th were hard because those are the days I'm flying to and from Germany. So I think the 12th should be fine.
okay. And the 26th
Yep.
is okay as well?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, so that brings up something that we brought up at the last meeting that maybe would help with that too, which is possibly, I know this hurts, but possibly changing the day of the meeting.
So,
Right, that's what I was just saying.
yes, so if there was a better day, you mean across the board or just those weeks?
Well, because it also changes the November meetings, right, to allow us to have more meetings in November.
So I think November, we're going to have to look to change specific to November
Okay,
anyway.
okay.
Is Thursday bad for people in general? Because if we can work on the other 10 months of the year
So,
on Thursdays.
it's not bad, it's just the Democratic Town Committee meeting is on Thursdays too, and so basically, if you get on school committee, you never get to go to any of the meetings.
Do they
for
meet
the-
every Thursday?
No, it's like
Once every month.
once or twice a month,
Yeah.
and and it's always during a school committee meeting. So
So
I'm
maybe
not-
some of these shifts around, because we're not going to be meeting every week.
exactly.
Hopefully that we're not going to have the need every week this year the way we did last year. What gets tricky in moving it across the board is that we're then makes it difficult for some of, like the select board and the planning board and some of the other
Okay,
town-wide
That's right.
okay.
boards. So that, make the shift in August would be my suggestion, and then in November, because we're looking at so many Thursday holidays, actually, this was, I think, Amanda, your suggestion was to add in potentially Monday, the 8th, to add in terms of if we need that for budget
That's fine with me.
presentations.
November
on
8th?
Mondays.
Yep.
So you would do 8 and 18 in November and eliminate 4, 11, and 25?
Yes, unless
Yeah.
you want to have turkey with us.
No, I'm all set.
That was a little fast.
Very quick, wasn't it?
November 8th and 18th.
8th and
So
18th.
that is back-to-back days,
Weeks.
weeks, sorry, but it's not
Yeah.
separated, it's more than 7 days.
And we need those for budget.
For budget,
Yeah.
right.
And it avoids the 3rd to the 6th, should
Right,
anybody
that was the other
participate
piece.
in MASC,
Right.
MASs.
Okay, so that gets us through, any other conflicts, suggestions, unchanged for the rest of the calendar year here?
Can I just ask about September, Nancy, to make sure that we are looking at the 2nd and the 23rd, not the 2nd and the 16th?
Oh, the 16th looks like it was a very
It was
pale
a no
green.
school day.
Sorry,
I thought the
Okay.
2nd and the 23rd is what we were looking
Yeah.
at
Okay, that's
in,
good. I just want to
in
make sure we all
September.
have the right.
Okay.
Yep, great.
Dr. Kavanaugh, when is the welcome back meeting for the teachers that we sometimes attend?
in your
Let's see,
statement.
so we come back on August 30th, so it would be Monday, August 30th.
Okay. And I mentioned I'll be out of town on July 8th, but I will hopefully be able to dial in. I think I'll have Wi-Fi. I hope.
So can we talk, then, if there's an issue with that, do you know? Because we can make sure, if we're at HCAM, I think it's easier for us to do
Okay.
in terms of making your voice more audible than it is in here.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's advertised as a rental house with Wi-Fi, so I'm hoping it works, but having not been there, I can't guarantee.
Oh, that's a good question.
Are others able to do the 8th? Because again, I do want to make sure that if there are dates where 2 people won't be here, that we'll not meet. Okay. And then, did you have one other question? I feel like besides the date for the back-to-school meeting with the teachers, which is optional, but we are often invited to on the 30th.
Just to make sure we put graduation on the calendar, too. That was the other one, the things we know we're typically at.
And that should be that Friday, it looks like the 3rd of June, which we don't have June on this calendar,
Okay.
that's why. Okay.
So one question for December, and this is more of a curiosity question. So we have the 2nd, the 9th, and the 16th, but we only had one meeting in November. Even if we add a second meeting in November, do we
We
still
have
want to
2 in November. We have the 2nd, we have the 8th and the 18th in November.
Right. What I'm saying is, when this was originally created, we only
Yeah.
had the 18th. Was were those back-to-back meetings trying to kind of make up for some of the November issues, or is that common that we have back-to-back meetings in December?
That is common
Okay.
to get through the budget presentations.
Okay, just verifying.
Potentially, once we get the budget calendar, we could eliminate one of those if we don't need all of those.
Yes.
To get rid of the one in the middle, the 9th, if we don't need that.
And what we've been doing with December and January, so we make that final budget presentation on the 16th, then we usually have a hearing on the 6th, and then we vote on the 13th.
Right.
Okay.
Yep, which usually piles them up in January.
Right. That also gives us 2 months that we have back-to-back meetings. So if there's as we get into our budget, if there's a way that we could try to keep in mind that we might be able to eliminate one, that would be a
Yes.
bonus. But with the hearing and all, I know that's difficult.
Yeah, just, like I
All
said,
right.
for informational purposes.
So is there a motion to approve the calendar as it is right now, knowing that if there's a problem, we could certainly move things down the road?
As amended.
As amended, yes.
Okay,
That's what I
yes,
meant.
motion to approve the calendar as amended.
Great.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that passes. Are there future agenda items that, I know there are a couple that we have outstanding that have been brought forward already, but are there others that have not been brought up that people have thought of or had come
We talked about air conditioning for the future,
to look at that?
to look at that for the schools that don't have it.
I have that in my list.
Thank you
Would
so
it-
much.
Would it make sense to have, it was a great update on the high school, but because we're trying to push to get that done, if possible, before school starts, would it make sense to get updates on that at each meeting, either through the superintendent report or an agenda item?
I think that would be great.
I think that would be really nice.
Okay.
Great information.
I had asked, but I'll ask on camera. I'm curious, we haven't heard this year from our CPAC organization, so I had asked to see if we could have CPAC come in and just give us an update on how the year went. And I don't know if when in the summer that would work for the CPAC coordinators, but let's see here.
We really need to build up that CPAC board population. And I think it would be really efficacious if we could get the help of the administration in asking team chairs to offer up suggestions for CPAC board members. Because the team chairs know those parents better than the parents do, because we've all been living in isolation for a year. And we don't want CPAC to disappear because it plays such an important role.
We can't have them disappear.
I
I mean, we need a vibrant
Well,
CPAC,
that's
so.
why I think if we could reach out to those team chairs through Dr. Kavanaugh, perhaps, so we're not overstepping our boundaries, and asking for parental suggestions.
I think that's a great idea. I have not heard if there's going to be the ice cream social or popsicles on the playground for new families coming in, but that might be an opportunity to invite CPAC to have a presence there and to be able to welcome new families in and to see if there are new families who are interested in being part of the organization.
I very
I
much
think it'd be a
agree,
good-
because CPAC was one of the main reasons I moved to this town.
I think
that
it'd be a
it
good
is.
discussion. That's why an agenda item. I think we have a lot to talk
Yep.
about.
Yeah, I do.
I agree. Okay, so that brings us into items by consensus.
As superintendent, I recommend the school committee approve the items by consensus as outlined in your agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Meg,
Second?
second by Leah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so that is unanimous and passes, and then I would look for a